It's 1892, and you're a young bride stepping into your new home, a sprawling, Victorian manor on the fog-shrouded hills of rural Pennsylvania. The air smells of damp earth and forgotten secrets. Your husband, Elias Blackwood, a charming widower with eyes like polished obsidian, promises you the world. But as the front door slams shut behind you, sealing you in with the ghosts of his past, you feel it, a chill that seeps into your bones. Not from the wind, but from something watching, something hungry. This is the story of the Blackwood curse, a tale of love twisted into madness, where 5 brides entered that house, and only one emerged with her sanity intact. But even she carried the shadows with her. What if I told you it wasn't ghosts that drove them insane? It was something far worse, a family secret buried in blood and betrayal. Stay with me, because by the end of this you'll question every creak in your own home tonight. Elias Blackwood wasn't always the monster the papers called him. Born into old money from coal mines that scarred the earth like open wounds, he inherited Blackwood Manor at 25. After his parents perished in a suspicious fire, officially ruled an accident, but whispers in town spoke of arson to claim the fortune. Elias was handsome, charismatic, the kind of man who could woo a room with a smile. Women flocked to him, drawn by his tales of adventure and the promise of stability in a world of uncertainty. His first wife, Clara, was no different. A school teacher from Philadelphia, 22 years old, with auburn hair and a laugh like summer rain. They married in a lavish ceremony in 1885, and she moved into the manor with dreams of filling its echoing halls with children. At first it was paradise. Clara redecorated the faded parlors, planted roses in the overgrown gardens, and hosted teas for the local gentry. But Elias? Oh, Elias had his shadows. Late nights in the attic, poring over yellowed journals from his grandfather, muttering about the bloodline's gift. Clara dismissed it as eccentricity, the quirk of a brilliant mind. Then came the dreams, vivid, unrelenting nightmares where faceless figures clawed at her from the walls, whispering her name in voices that echoed like cracking ice. She'd wake screaming, drenched in sweat, only to find Elias watching her from the doorway, his face unreadable. "It's the house settling, my love," he'd say, stroking her hair until she slept again. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, burrowing into her thoughts like roots through soil. One autumn evening, just 6 months in, Clara shattered. During dinner, she hurled her plate at the wall, screaming about the eyes in the mirrors. They see everything. Elias called the doctor, who prescribed laudanum and bed rest, but the episodes worsened. She'd lock herself in the nursery, convinced invisible. Hands were strangling the life from her unborn child, though she wasn't pregnant. The town doctor arrived one stormy night to find her clawing at her own arms, drawing blood, babbling about a curse in the blood that Elias had infected her with. He committed her to the state asylum in Harrisburg, where she arrived raving, her once bright eyes hollow. Clara Blackwood lasted 3 weeks before she scratched her way through a barred window, falling to her death on the cobblestones below. Suicide, they ruled. Elias mourned publicly, a broken man in black crepe, but privately, he burned her letters that very night. And the manor stood silent, waiting for the next bride. But Clara's death wasn't the end. It was the beginning, because buried in the manor's cellar, beneath layers of coal dust and regret, lay the first clue to the Blackwood madness. A locket, etched with the initials of Elias's grandmother, containing a lock of hair, stained with something darker than ink blood. And as Elias placed a discreet ad in the matrimonial columns, "Wealthy gentleman seeks refined companion for quiet life." The curse stirred once more, hungry for its next victim. Clara was gone, but the whispers never left Blackwood Manor. 2 years later, in 1889, Elias married again. Evelyn Hart, a 26-year-old pianist from Boston, delicate as porcelain with raven hair and fingers that danced across ivory keys. She believed music could soothe any darkness. She was wrong. On their wedding night, Evelyn played Chopin in the grand parlor. The notes floated up the staircase, and something played them back, slightly off-key from the empty floor above. She laughed it off. Elias kissed her forehead and whispered, "Old houses have memories." Within weeks, the piano began playing by itself at 3:17 a.m. always. The same haunting lullaby she'd never learned. Evelyn started seeing sheet music appear on the stand, written in red ink that smelled metallic, notes that spelled out her name backwards. Then the keys slammed down on her fingers, crushing bone. Doctors called it hysterical self-harm. She knew better. By spring 1890, she stopped sleeping. She was found barefoot in the snow, arranging frozen roses in the shape of a screaming mouth, singing that lullaby in a voice that wasn't hers. 3 nights later, she walked into the frozen lake behind the manor, still playing invisible keys on her broken, bleeding hands. Elias buried her quietly. The piano was locked, but the keys kept playing. Elias courted her with roses dipped in perfume and promises of freedom. She moved in, turned the ballroom into her private stage, and rehearsed monologues to empty velvet seats. At first, the house seemed to applaud. Echoes came back louder, warmer, almost alive. Then the applause turned to boos. Invisible audiences hissed her lines back, twisted, venomous. Mirrors showed her co-stars with melted faces. One night, during rehearsal, the chandelier crashed inches from her head. She found the bolts unscrewed by unseen hands. Lillian fought back. She burned sage, nailed crosses above every door, screamed defiance at the walls. The house answered by speaking in her dead mother's voice, begging her to finish the performance. Makeup began appearing on her face while she slept. Thick white grease paint. Black tears tracked down her cheeks like a tragic clown. On the winter solstice, guests arrived for her grand comeback show. They found the ballroom doors barred from inside. When they broke in, Lillian was center stage in a blood-soaked wedding gown, throat slit ear to ear with a straight razor, smiling grotesquely under cracked porcelain makeup. On the backdrop, written in her own blood, "The critic finally loved me." Elias wept for the papers. That night, the ballroom lights flickered on by themselves, and the slow applause began again. Beatrice Langford, a soft-spoken librarian with round spectacles and a love for forbidden books. She lasted 11 months. She discovered Elias's hidden attic, library, journals detailing a 17th-century ancestor who bargained with something ancient for wealth, promising the minds of every woman who bears the Blackwood name. Beatrice tried to burn the books. That night, the pages reappeared inside her stomach. Surgeons removed 47 charred sheets from her abdomen while she was still awake, whispering Latin backwards. She died on the table, smiling, saying, "The debt is almost paid." Bride 5, Margaret Maggie Reed, a 24-year-old nurse who believed science could cure anything. She arrived after reading the deaths as coincidence. She sedated Elias, chained him in the cellar, and attempted an exorcism with carbolic acid and prayer. For 3 days, the manor shook like it was trying to tear itself from the earth. On the 4th morning, neighbors found Maggie sitting on the front steps, perfectly calm, hair turned snow-white overnight. She was holding Elias's severed head by the hair, kissing its cold forehead and humming the same lullaby Evelyn had drowned to. When police approached, she looked up with black, endless eyes and said, "The house is full now. Thank you for visiting." Blackwood Manor burned to the ground that same week, officially arson, case unsolved. But on moonless nights, travelers on the old Pennsylvania road still report seeing 5 women in blood-stained wedding gowns, standing at the charred foundation, beckoning with broken fingers. The curse didn't die with the house. It just learned to travel.